The Witcher 4 hype is at an all-time high thanks to the reveal trailer that dropped at this year's Game Awards. And just like so many others out there, man am I excited. Obviously this game is still years away, so while it's best not to get too carried away with excitement at this point in time, I need to at least talk about it a little bit. So today I want to go over what I'm hoping to see in The Witcher 4 and all the aspects that I really hope CD Projekt Red nails this time around. Real quick though, my background on the series. I'm not by any means a Witcher superfan or extremely well versed in the lore or anything like that. My experience with the franchise is that I played The Witcher 2, and then I played the hell out of The Witcher 3. The Witcher 3 is one of my favorite games ever made, and a title that I constantly find myself going back to. So while I might not be super knowledgeable about the larger franchise, I definitely do consider myself a huge fan of The Witcher 3, and cannot wait for the sequel. So with all that being said, let's talk about what I want to see with The Witcher 4. This first point is the very large elephant in the room, and it really goes without saying, but I'm still going to say it anyway. We need a smooth launch this time around. Under no circumstances can CD Projekt Red suffer another Cyberpunk 2077 situation here, especially with a brand as huge and beloved as The Witcher. I personally wasn't very interested in Cyberpunk 2077 at launch and still haven't really played it to this day, so I can't speak from firsthand experience about what that game's launch was really like, but it was pretty hard to miss the PR shitstorm that came from that situation. A similarly broken, buggy launch for The Witcher 4 would be a disaster and something that CD Projekt Red simply cannot afford here. The company did a good job repairing its reputation and eventually restoring fans' faith over the last couple of years with post-release support, and it seems like Cyberpunk 2077 is legitimately a good game now, but I know some fans never got over the way that game launched and swore it off forever because of it. If God forbid The Witcher 4 released in a similar state, and CD Projekt Red went through all of that for a second time, I legitimately don't know if they could recover. Not to mention it would be a massive bummer for what might end up being one of the most anticipated games of all time to release like that. So yeah, a smooth, relatively bug-free launch is paramount for The Witcher 4. CD Projekt Red, take your time on this one. This game simply needs to be in a good spot when it releases, even if that means it doesn't come out until sometime in the 2030s, as painful as that might sound. The next thing that I really want The Witcher 4 to emphasize is its combat. I think The Witcher 3 is a near perfect game, but if there's one thing that it could improve on, is its combat. That's not to say that I think that the combat in 3 is bad. I think it's more than serviceable, and with the right build is even super fun at times. However, when I replayed The Witcher 3 in early 2024, there's no denying that its combat is an aspect of the game that has been greatly surpassed by more modern action RPG offerings. It's fun in spurts, but it isn't particularly deep, and once you get your build down, there's usually very little need or incentive to diversify your battle tactics. At least in my most recent playthrough, most of my battles simply resulted in me spamming my most powerful signs and the fast attack button until all the enemies were gone. Luckily, introducing Ciri as the main character in The Witcher 4 opens up all sorts of potential in this department. Simply looking at the handful of playable Ciri sections in the last game shows where the series is likely going regarding its combat. Ciri is far more powerful than Geralt, and her power should open up all sorts of unique combat builds and opportunities. The idea of teleporting around the battlefield at will, brutally laying waste to all sorts of different monsters, has me very, very excited. Other than those minor combat shortcomings, it's hard for me to critique any of the other gameplay in The Witcher 3, but I do think that there are some natural areas that the series can grow and expand in the next installment. Continuing to build on the customization options that we had in the last game is key. A lot of the armor and cosmetics in The Witcher 3 didn't hit quite as hard as they could have for me, and I think giving Ciri a wealth of badass outfit and weapon options should be towards the top of the list for CD Projekt Red in the next game. Also, a customizable home or space would also go a long way. The Witcher 4 is going to be a game that people want to get completely and utterly lost in, and giving the player a customizable space to call their own is a great way to add another layer of immersion to the title. Not to mention it adds more items to collect and goals to strive for, in a game that players will undoubtedly be sinking hundreds of hours into. And yes, I realize that a lot of the things that I'm bringing up here have been modded into The Witcher 3 for years. After all, that title is one of the most popularly modded games ever, and people could realistically make it the only game they ever need if they engage with all the fan content it has to offer. But a lot of gamers, such as myself, are still primarily tied to their consoles and want a lot of this to be official content in the base game itself. So fingers crossed, CD Projekt Red is aware of this. The other thing I would really like is for The Witcher 4 to lean into the horror side of the universe a bit more. The Witcher 3 can be incredibly atmospheric and creepy at times, but it stops short of legitimate horror in my opinion. This is a franchise that has you hunting down horrific monstrosities, and there's an opportunity to create some truly memorable and horrifying encounters in the next game. It does seem like the team might be going in this direction, as the creature we saw in the reveal trailer is pretty damn unsettling, but I hope they ramp this up even more in the game, and give us some absolutely terrifying encounters that stick with us long after we've put down our controllers. By the time The Witcher 4 releases, it will likely be more than 15 years since the last installment, which means the team has access to plenty of technological advances. I hope some of these resources go towards making The Witcher 4 truly terrifying. Coming to the end of the list here, and I don't want to spend too much time on this topic because the internet is already aflame with this discourse, but the other elephant in the room here is how is Geralt going to be handled? I love Geralt, he's one of my favorite characters ever, but I'm also 100% on board and excited by the prospect of playing as Ciri. Geralt got 3 games, and The Witcher 3, particularly the DLC, was clearly meant to be the send-off to that character. That being said, it's already been confirmed that he will appear in this next game in some regard, and my only hope is that he's handled well. It would be cool for him to feature somewhat prominently, but I also think it's very important to establish this game as Ciri's story. Maybe he can pop in from time to time as a wise mentor figure, and have 1 or 2 really badass vintage Geralt moments, but what's most important to me is I just want the guy to be happy. I want him to have his happy ending and be enjoying his retirement somewhere in this game. The man has been through enough, and it's time to let him enjoy things. The last thing I want is for him to be dragged back into the fold and have some sort of tragic Han Solo moment like we got in The Force Awakens. Let the man rest. And finally, the last thing that The Witcher 4 really needs to nail, maybe the most important aspect of all, it needs to nail Gwent. I'm obviously exaggerating a little bit, but Gwent was one of my biggest surprises when I first played The Witcher 3. I became addicted to that dumb little minigame, and I sank countless of hours into building my card collection and beating all the opponents in the game. Clearly, I wasn't alone, as a standalone Gwent game released a couple of years ago, and while I haven't yet dove into that experience, I'm eager to again get my Gwent fix in The Witcher 4. Gwent was already a very impressive and fleshed out minigame in The Witcher 3, but I want to see them go even bigger this time around. More cards to collect, more opponents to battle. I'd even like to see more varied and deeper card mechanics, as long as it doesn't mess too much with the core simplicity and addictiveness of the game. Even if they don't change anything at all, I'm just going to be happy with more Gwent. Anyway, that's my primary, very early wish list for The Witcher 4. We have years and years to speculate and dream about this game, so I don't anticipate this being the last time I talk about it here. In the meantime, I think it's time for me to return to The Witcher 3 once again.